This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
We made this.
Hey, JJ. I'm really sorry Tony couldn't be here. I know he was supposed to record this episode with you, but I'm afraid he's been attacked. His throat was bitten.
Oh my God, Tony's dead?
No, he's not dead. His throat was bitten. It was sort of gnawed on. But anyways, he can't do the podcast, obviously. He's got like a bunch of bandages around his neck. So it's me today. Hope that's all right.
That makes sense. That makes sense. It's okay. I'm glad he's all right.
Yeah, he'll be fine. Totally fine. But so yeah. Anyway, daylight's burning, so I guess we better get on with it. Welcome to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. I'm your host, Sarah Blair, and I've got friend of the podcast and artist JJ Lendl with me today. Hi, JJ.
Hey, Sarah. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're here to talk about the season 5 episode, Bad Blood.
Yes, I've heard of this episode. You know, I've not seen a lot of the X-Files, but I did watch this one.
Yeah, it's pretty... it's pretty much one of the most acclaimed episodes, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. Tony, before his unfortunate gnawing incident, had asked if there were any particular episodes in season 5 that I'd be willing to come on and chat about, and this was the first one that popped to mind. So I am very excited to be discussing this episode today.
I think it's the first episode that pops into a lot of people's minds. So in this episode, vampires come to Cheney, Texas. Mulder and Scully tell different stories about that time that Mulder overreacted and did the thing with that thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of an experimental episode as far as like the storytelling goes. And I think it's a really cool spin on it. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about it with you.
Well, let's do it. Let's talk about it. Unless there was something else we needed to talk about before. I have nothing planned. You are 100% in the driver's seat here.
No pressure, right? Well, as long as we don't get differing podcasts versions of this, I think it would be okay.
You know, maybe that's what we should do. Maybe we should record the podcast, and then each of us will record a synopsis of the podcast, and then we should make somebody else edit that all together.
Yeah, Tony, that's okay. On you, buddy.
As soon as you get out of the hospital, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So this episode originally aired February 22nd, 1998. Did you happen to see this when it originally aired, or?
I must have, because at that point I was watching it every week.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to remember, because, okay, so February 1998, I would have been in 7th grade. Yes, 7th grade. And I was watching the show regularly by season 2, so if it aired season 2 or later, I saw it live, and I probably recorded it on VHS.
Yep.
Same?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I was in high school by then, but I think
am I making you feel old when I say that I was in 7th grade? I can change
tiny
that.
Bit.
I was a junior in college.
It's fine. It's fine.
I was getting my doctorate.
It's not that far. Just a couple of years. I think I was like I notoriously can't do maths, but I think I was 16 in 1998, so 15 or 16.
We won't do the math here on the pod. I don't know. For me, this is like peak X-Files.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and this is like, at this point, I guess they had already shot the film, because I think they shot Fight the Future between seasons 4 and 5, and then it was released after season 5. I think I'm right about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
So this
sounds
is
about right.
Yeah, this is like X-Files mania. I mean, there's a major motion picture coming out in a few months when this aired. So I think you could argue that the X-Files, at least in the zeitgeist, was like at the top of its game.
Oh yeah, for sure. And this kind of falls like right in the middle of season 5. It's episode 12. And this episode was written by Vince Gilligan.
Vince Gilligan. Has he done anything since the X-Files? I feel like his career has just derailed since the show went off the air. I feel really bad for that guy.
I mean, it's just really hard to get a job in Hollywood these days.
Right. You've just, you're doing bad. Your career's breaking. Oh, that was so bad. When I was, this was last year at San Diego Comic-Con, so almost like exactly a year from the day that we're recording this, we actually released my poster for this episode, Bad Blood.
And it's so good, by the way.
Thank you. That's very nice of you to say. And I was at the booth in San Diego doing a signing, and someone comes up and asked for the Bad Blood poster, and asked if I could sign it. I said, yeah, absolutely. And they said, okay, I'm going to go over and I'm going to give this to Vince.
What?
I said, Vince Gilligan? He said, yeah. He had me run over and he wanted me to grab one for him. I said,
in the world?
He could have come over.
Yeah.
I guess he doesn't love going on the convention floor, which is totally understandable.
So we've got this episode directed by Cliff Bowl, and he also directed Small Potatoes, which is another comedic episode. And then he did Chimera and Jump the Shark as well for the X-Files.
He's a name that pops up constantly in television direction in the 90s, and I actually realized that he had done a lot of Star Trek as well. He directed over 20 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, and then episodes of Deep Space Nine and Voyager. And coincidentally, or maybe not, he had directed an episode of TNG, which was also a he said, she said, sort of like Rashomon type of episode focusing on Commander Riker called Matter of Perspective. So it's like he had experience telling this type of story before, which I thought was really funny. And I was wondering, did they see that episode of TNG and were like, yeah, we should give this one to him because he's got experience telling these sort of like multi-version stories.
That's really cool. I wonder about that because I know Vince Gilligan had mentioned that he based this episode on the Rashomon movie, and then he also based it on an episode of Dick Van Dyke. And I actually watched it because I love that show, so I went back and watched that episode, and it's pretty hilarious. It's really good. And so is this,
because I've seen Dick Van Dyke, but I'm not remembering this episode in particular. Is it Dick Van Dyke's character and then Mary Tyler Moore's character having different perspectives of a story?
Yes. So okay. It's kind of funny because the episode starts off and they're in this big fight, and then Rob walks out, and then the goldfish in the goldfish tank talk to each other. It's really bizarre, and they're like, wow, that was a big fight. And he's like, I saw the whole thing. And so they go back and tell each other what actually happened. So we get to see what actually happened between them. And then Rob and Laura Laura tells the neighbor her version of the story. And then Rob goes, he's the writer for the show, and he goes and tells the other writers about it. And so we get their separate versions. And then they come back together at the end and make up, and it's pretty good.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's great. And so I guess that would have been post Rashomon.
Yeah.
I'm just like, did Kurosawa steal this idea from Dick Van Dyke?
I don't know.
How dare he? But no, that would have been a couple of years after, at least.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that listeners are familiar with Kurosawa's Rashomon, which is a really great film.
I haven't had the chance to see it, but you've seen it, right?
Goodness.
So, yeah.
Oh,
I know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big Akira Kurosawa fan, and that was the movie that arguably sort of launched his international career in the 1950s. Yeah, it just like Bad Blood. I mean, it's basically it's a story told 3 times from different perspectives. And it's the film itself, and it's been a couple of years since I've seen it, but the film itself it's sort of almost like a courtroom drama, although there isn't a courtroom, but it's trying to figure out like what happened during a specific incident. So it's very much like it's very clear that Vince Gilligan based Bad Blood on that film, and so many other people have based episodes of television and just different stories on that sort of gimmick. But I think that Bad Blood is great because it does it so well, and it's able to sort of weave so much of what people love about the show and the characters and how they relate into these different versions of the same story.
Yeah, it's a fascinating way to tell a story. I really enjoy it. And a lot of times, when I get stuck in my own writing, I'll write a scene from someone else's point of view to kind of break things up and get things flowing again.
Yeah.
So it's really fun, and it's really interesting to try to see the events through a different point of view and see how that would change and how the perspective would change. I think Vince Gilligan does a great job with that in this episode because, you get to see Mulder and Scully and how they perceive each other and how they perceive themselves. So I think it's really, really interesting character study.
Yeah, and from a writer's perspective, I imagine that it would give you new insights into the characters whose perspective that you're writing from, because Gilligan had to not only really know the characters who are telling the stories, but really get the relationships that they have with each other. And I think this episode is really interesting because it sort of points out, in a comedic way, how different Mulder relates to Scully as opposed to how Scully relates to Mulder. And to do that and to have these sort of really deep looks into characters that are at this point been around for, half a decade, but do it in a meaningful way, but at the same time do it in a very entertaining, comedic way. Yeah, I mean, I feel like he hit it out of the park.
It's really masterful. And surprisingly, on IMDb, can you guess what this episode was rated?
Can I guess what this episode was rated? I feel like IMDb is a very strange place when it comes to ratings. But I would hope that it's rated pretty high, like at least a 7 point something, or perhaps higher.
It's a little bit above a 7. It's a 9.4.
A little bit above, yes.
Yeah, it's the highest rated episode of season 5.
Wow.
Yeah. The interesting part about it, I think, is it's got almost double the votes. It's got 4,372 votes at the time of this recording, which is pretty much double all the other episodes except for Postmodern Prometheus. So it's Postmodern Prometheus has 3,000 votes, roughly, about 3,500 votes.
So people came out in mass to vote for this episode on IMDb. Like there was some sort of online campaign.
Right.
Like the kid from The Sandlot was like, guys, you got to vote on my episode of The X-Files here. Let's do it.
Yeah, because most of the other episodes are like 2,000 votes or so. They all kind of average out to be around 2,000. And this is, 4,000 votes. It's completely double.
There's something about these lighter comedic episodes of The X-Files that shouldn't work, but they oftentimes, I think, work better than some of the more serious Monster of the Week episodes. And I don't know what that's about. Like, maybe it's about just getting to know the characters from another perspective, like we were talking about, or just the way that they cut the tension. But there's such mass appeal for these types of episodes.
And I think it's interesting because you've got Darren Morgan and Vince Gilligan, who are more the humorous type writers, and they seem to kind of provide almost like this satirical look at the show and sort of do their own commentary on it and make light of it, but in a fun way, not a mean way or anything. And I think people appreciate that. So do you want to dig in and talk about this in depth and go scene by scene?
Yeah, let's jump on that massage bed and pull out the poison pizza and take a big bite.
Okay, so let's talk about the teaser. So we've got Mulder. There's somebody running. It's like mysterious running and screaming. We don't know what's happening. It's dark. It's a dark and stormy night, basically.
Yes.
We don't know what's happening. Usually you don't see that. Especially you don't usually see an almost curse in the beginning of the episode either.
Right? Yes. Yeah.
Or Mulder with a steak.
Film. Right.
And fake vampire teeth. I mean, I love the big reveal of Scully, and she so sensibly just goes for the teeth and starts, kind of messing with them, and she's like, "Oh, they're fake,"
She's
and
like,
you just,
Mulder,
what?
Why? And just the look on his face, and what I think is interesting is, the tone of the episode. If you talk about the episode just like on paper, it's like Mulder and Scully are searching for a serial killer. And it's like, wow, that seems pretty serious. But then you watch the episode and like, you could tell that, it's almost like a turn to camera as opposed to like, oh my God, what have I done? It's sort of like, oops.
Yeah. My bad.
Right. And then you just cut to the opening theme. So, yeah, it's a very bonkers way to start an episode of any show, but definitely a very different opening for an episode of The X-Files.
Yeah. I think that's the perfect word to describe this entire episode is bonkers.
Bonkers. Yes. Mm-hmm. Trademark.
Yeah. So we've got the first scene after the credits, and everything about this scene is just perfect. The music, like he staked a guy, and but he was drugged. Like Mulder and Scully are talking in the office about what happened, and we're still trying to figure it out as an audience.
Right. And again, even the tone of this scene, I mean, it features Mulder basically having a hissy fit because he's so frustrated with the situation that he kicks a trash can to death. So we've got 2 vicious attacks in the first 5 minutes of the episode. You mentioned the music, and I noticed the music as well. It's a really playful music cue over this scene. And I feel like it really integrated the X-Files theme song even more than usual, which I thought was an interesting choice.
Yeah.
It definitely stood out.
A fun fact, when I was watching this episode, my daughter came in. She's 3, and she came in, and she was kind of watching that scene, and she goes, "Oh, he's so mad." And I was like, "Yeah, he's upset. Why do you think he's upset?" And she said, "Because he missed the trash can when he threw the paper." I was like, yeah, that's exactly it.
That's awesome that your daughter used context clues to try and solve that mystery. That's
absolutely. She's a genius.
Smart little girl, yeah.
So we segue then into Scully's point of view. So, Mulder is like, all right, well, we've got to get our story straight. So you tell me what you think happened. And this is where we get the Rashomon effect. And
I'm not a lawyer.
On this journey.
But, I mean, what they're doing right now, it's probably a federal crime, is that they're trying to get their story straight before they go in front of a deputy director of the FBI. So,
when Mulder and Scully ever done anything by the book?
Right, yes. And that office is bugged.
Absolutely.
So, they're taking their fate into their own hands. But, we just jump right into it from Scully's perspective. And we find ourselves in the office again, right? It's just sort of like a jump cut to a scene. I guess did they say how many days ago they started investigating the case?
I didn't notice if they did.
It's
probably like on the. I don't think it said though. I think it was just a matter of days.
Yeah, it would have to have been.
Yeah. Everything's still fresh in their mind, I think. And
right.
Characteristically exuberant is what she says. This episode is so quotable. Every line is just, you can't go wrong with quoting any line from this episode.
I wonder how Duchovny and Anderson felt performing this episode. I mean, other than it maybe being a breath of fresh air during like a 24 episode horrible season schedule, which I know is like soul crushing, but they're basically parodying their own performances.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like some actors might not be 100% game for that if they maybe have a large ego, but they chew it up in this episode, and it's so entertaining.
You can tell on screen, it just looks like they're having so much fun. And I know Gillian Anderson has mentioned that this is either one of her favorite episodes or her absolute favorite episode, and one of the only ones that she even remembers. So I guess it really stood out to her.
The X-Files was her 1960s, I guess. She
yeah.
was just barely present.
I'm sure they all
throughout.
blend together. Yeah, and then we end up in the funeral home in Cheney, Texas, and Mulder forgets Scully's name. So
I love that moment where it's one of those things, like almost like snapping, like who? Scully. That's right.
That's
Scully.
right. That's your name. I've only known you for 5 years, and I have an enormous crush on you, according to all the shippers. But that's fine.
Right.
I don't know who you are. But we got to remember this is from Scully's point of view. So,
right.
But again, this is how she's feeling, and like how she, I think she feels like, she does all of this, like everything. Her career is now completely about Mulder.
Right. I mean, it in many ways it really is.
It is.
And I know that this is, that's a big part of the fandom is this dynamic. And like, how much does, we know that Mulder cares for Scully deeply, but, there are these moments where it's like, Mulder, wake up. Like what, I guess like questioning the level of respect that Mulder has for Scully as a professional beyond the needs of his investigations. And you can really feel in this episode that is conscious in Scully's mind.
Absolutely. After that, I just have Dana written down because they cut back to the office where they're telling each other the story, and she has mentioned that the sheriff called her Dana. He's like, Dana? He never knew your first name.
Yes, we should talk about Luke Wilson. We should
Absolutely.
talk about maybe one of the biggest cameos in the series run. Luke Wilson as I would say he sort of plays two characters in this. He plays the suave, handsome sheriff, and then he plays the sheriff with the largest front teeth in Texas.
Big buck teeth.
Yes, big buck teeth. And the first version that we meet is the rose-colored Scully version here. And I guess that Vince Gilligan had written a movie called Home Fries, which was in production, I guess, a little prior to them starting this season. And so he, I guess, coaxed Luke Wilson to come on as a guest star on this episode. And I guess this, I don't think the movie had come out yet during the airing of this episode. Is that right?
That's correct, because I remember when it did come out, I was so excited to see it because it had the sheriff from Bad Blood in it.
And featuring the sheriff from the X-Files episode Bad Blood.
That was my first experience with Luke Wilson, and discovering him was Bad Blood. And then I was like, oh yeah, Home Fries. Like, I know that guy. He was in X-Files. I have to see this movie.
Yeah. He was part of like the Wes Anderson contingent at that point, because they had already made Bottle Rocket with his brother Owen, and he had done a couple of things before then. So he was like a known actor to folks prior to this episode airing. So it really was a get for the show, which is kind of cool.
So do you have a creepy cemetery near you off the beaten path, the better?
I don't think that I do. So I'm still sort of in this unique position where I moved to a new city like 2 years ago, and there's stuff that I know. Like, I know where I can get things like food and clothes, but people will just in like regular conversation be like, well, the thingamabob by the whatsits, and I just have to like nod through it. Like, I have no idea where that is. I've not been there. Hopefully I figure it out. So there could easily be a creepy cemetery very close to where I am, and I just have no idea.
I do have several creepy cemeteries by my house. Civil War ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got Scully doing her first autopsy. And
Ever.
this is a
She's
tourist.
Never done one. Right. So they, guess we should mention for those who have never seen the episode Bad Blood, but regularly listen to the X-Cast, there were a number of bovine victims, but what Mulder failed to mention until the very end of his explanation was that they had a human victim, a tourist, that Scully has to perform an autopsy on.
He kind of buried the lead on that one, didn't he?
He most certainly did.
What I'm interested to know is how many tourists end up in Cheney, Texas. Is that a place? Is that like really high on your list of vacation destinations?
Well, I hear that Aunt Bee's Pizza is to die for. And so maybe that is what is pulling all of these folks there. Or the world-famous RV park.
It's the best RV park in the United States, I think. So
as far as I know,
all the tourists want to go. And they all wear the Hawaiian shirts, too.
Yes. So they're clearly on vacation. Because I think legally at this point, if you're caught wearing a Hawaiian shirt and you're not on vacation, you will be sent to prison. I think that is federal law.
Mulder would know.
Yes.
He knows the law really well.
Yeah, and he's a federal agent. It makes sense.
Yeah. So Scully's having a day. I mean, she got up, ate her breakfast, went to the office, and, Mulder just inundated her with this ridiculous parade of cows.
Yes.
On the slides. And now she's in Cheney, Texas. But at least, the highlight is that she gets to see this beautiful sheriff. And he listens to her and agrees with her.
And calls her smart.
Yeah.
And acknowledges her skill set and her reasoning and the information that she brings. Which, clearly, this is not something that Agent Mulder is doing or is doing often enough.
And unlike her partner, he knows her first name.
Yes.
So she goes to do this autopsy, and the scalpel blade comes out of her scalpel, and it's dinner time. It's 4:54 p.m. It's dinner time. She's hungry. She's doing this autopsy, and she describes the stomach contents being, pepperoni, cheese, green peppers, mushrooms, and even to this day, that's how I eat my pizza. It's my favorite pizza to eat because
wow, is that as a tribute to this episode?
Yes, yeah.
That's a fan right there.
I know, yeah, and that's how I drink my coffee too. I drink it, with milk, no sugar, because that's how Scully takes her coffee.
Similarly, I'll only eat pizza when it's been pre-digested by a murder victim, but it doesn't matter what toppings to me.
After that, we go to the Davy Crockett Motor Court. Excuse me, the Sam Houston Motor Lodge.
Right. Yes, that was a
Pardon
fun
me.
little...
Fun fact.
Yes.
My great Aunt Elsie told me that Sam Houston was one of our relatives.
Really?
Yes. And she
ancestry that.
Yeah, she was born in 1894, and he died in 1863, so I'm guessing she would know, because, her parents or grandparents probably would have talked about him.
There would have been, a pretty direct connection.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I haven't looked it up on any of the sites, though, but... Yeah, I believe her.
Don't. Just trust her.
No,
you don't need
she
to verify that. So they go to the trailer park. What happens next, Sarah?
The Motor Lodge, and then this is where Mulder steals the magic fingers. Do they still have magic fingers? It's been a while since I've seen them around.
I don't often find myself in those types of lodgings. Mm-hmm. I'd like to think that there's still an audience out there for them, and if there's an audience for them, yeah, sure, they've got to be there. I don't know if they still cost $0.25. You might be able to use Apple Pay to activate at this point. It might cost you a pretty penny, but yeah, I'm gonna say yes. These still need to be out there.
Yeah, I agree. And she lets Mulder know something very important, that the chloral hydrate is the thing that he was looking for that he didn't know he was looking for. So she found poison in the pizza that the tourist ate, but that's not what killed him. He was still exsanguinated.
Right.
But they discovered that the vampire who exsanguinated him had to knock him out first.
Which, like, begs the question, like, what the heck kind of vampire is this? So Mulder's not super pleased.
So he's disappointed. But, you know, he gets to go on the magic fingers and everything is good because he just doesn't stop laughing about it.
But he also drops a bomb on Scully, which is, hey, we've got another victim.
This vampire's working fast. And
Yes.
Scully needs to work fast to keep up with him. So she's got to go back out and do another autopsy. And she's not too thrilled about it. This is one of my favorite parts of the episode, actually. Because she is weighing all the... We've already seen her kind of start weighing and doing all the autopsy
We
process.
should mention a big bummer about her having to go and do this autopsy is that she has just ordered a pizza.
Right.
And will
Mulder...
be unable to eat it. But luckily, Mulder's there to save the day.
Right. Yeah, she's doing this. And then she does the heart, the lung. And I like these cuts here. They're real quick cuts.
Yes.
Because we've already seen this once. And she is just getting to it. And then I really need to know if this was an accident or if it was on purpose. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the
slipping
intestines.
off of the scale.
Right.
Yeah, I think it'd be really tough to make that happen. It feels like a blooper that they kept in.
Oh, yeah.
And it works so well.
She just played it through so perfectly. She just like the look on her face. I just need to see the extended before, you know, or like what happened right after that. Because
there are blooper reels for each season, right? And I don't know that I've seen the season 5 blooper reel. And if this
you need to look that up.
It's got to
Listeners.
be in it, right?
This has got to be.
Chris Carter, if you could send us the unedited season 5 blooper reel,
Please.
we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
So we've got heavy breathing. There's a phone call, and it's just some, like, creepy, heavy breathing. And you notice in this version, she is just like, hello, hello, and then she hangs up. She doesn't say anything else, which is important for later.
Yes. It's one of those subtle differences in the
Right.
story.
Is this where she realizes the chloral hydrate, right?
Yes, because
Is in
she's
the
looking
pizza.
over the stomach contents,
Right.
and she sees that it's pizza again, and she has a very cinematic, out loud realization. You know, the drug is in the pizza. Mulder. And then I think we smash cut to the hotel, where she is kicking in the door, which flies to pieces, and all she sees are the feet of Mulder, having collapsed on the other side of the bed. And as she approaches...
Yeah, but she shoots Ronnie, too.
Well, she doesn't see Ronnie at first, but then he pops up.
Yes.
Out of the bed. In this version, she shoots at Ronnie.
Right.
And
Patrick
she
Rinna.
gets 2 shots
Go
off.
Patrick Rinna, yeah.
Yes, and he, yeah. So, watching this episode again brought back not just nostalgia for the X-Files, but for the slew of children's films that he starred in the early 90s.
Oh, man.
Including The Sandlot and The Big Green. And it's funny because I remember watching this episode and thinking, back originally, and thinking, hey, that's him from The Sandlot. From all those years ago, and you look at it, it was like 2 years before then. It's not like this was like his big return to acting. It just shows how slowly time goes by when you're a kid.
Oh, man.
But yeah, he hops up, he gets out of the hotel room. Scully seems more distracted with making sure that Mulder is okay rather than pursuing a suspect. And this is where we have one of the other very quotable moments of the episode, when she reaches down to make sure that Mulder is okay. He decides to respond with lyrics from the theme song to Shaft, as one does.
I went out and bought the CD after that episode.
That's great. That's
and
amazing.
then Mulder goes, I did not.
But I'm sort of like, there are moments in the episode where, you're listening to Scully's version and you're like, I don't think that happened. But this is one of those moments where you're like, she wouldn't make that up. This went down. This
Definitely
is what happened.
happened.
He was drugged.
He was drugged. And then he overreacted, and the vampire teeth were fake.
Yes. And so that sort of takes us right back up to the episode teaser.
The point where his zeal was augmented by the chloral hydrate.
So in the office now that Scully's story is sort of out there, they are preparing to actually have their meeting with Skinner. But before they do that, we've got to get the other side of the story, which would be from Mulder's perspective. And I think maybe, I mean, there are a lot of things to love in this episode, but the way that David Duchovny plays the first scene in his flashback, which is like he's out of character in the original scene where he is being super overzealous. Mm-hmm. But in this scene, he plays it so subtly, and he seems so meek. It's hilarious because you're like, this did not happen this way. And Scully is such a jerk the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
It's like they upped the ante from the ridiculousness of the first version, and now Mulder's is even more implausible. But I really loved how Duchovny played this scene, because it was really against type for what he's used to doing with Mulder in these circumstances.
One of my favorite parts is with the cows, and in the first telling, you got him just like zipping through those slides, just she can't even see him, they're just going, and he's talking 90 miles an hour and just going through it. He's like, these slides, and look at these cows, and here's this cow, and here's another cow, and they're all fitting. and then in his version, you've got the slides, and he's like, well, just let me show you here, and then he's got to like go through all these slides, and it's just like it's the best.
I think my favorite moment, and it's a moment of physical comedy, is when he lets her know that they're going to fly to Texas. The way that he places gently the airline ticket onto the table, as though he is presenting like a fragile child and placing it into a basket. It kills me.
Yeah. Hope you brought your cowboy boots.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not that Mexican goat sucker either.
Yeah. There is I will bring up the film Back to the Future, which doesn't really have anything to do with this episode, but the screenwriters of Back to the Future, Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, have talked about that script a little bit. And I think that script is a really great example of how, if you're writing a movie really tightly, every scene has a purpose. And within every scene, every line has a purpose and has a motivation. And Back to the Future is really expertly structured. And everything that happens in that film early on pays off in some way later off in the film. And it reminds me of this teleplay, because during the first go-through of this story, you have a lot of things that are put out there, and he finds ways to pay them off in the second version by alluding to them in a different manner, which I think is really funny and really clever.
Oh, yes. Yes, I agree. And so we get back to the funeral home again, and Mulder makes the point that Scully didn't hear him ask about all of the caskets or coffins in the funeral home. And
he's like, I had this expert observation that you were clearly distracted and didn't witness my greatness.
Yeah.
And then maybe the piece de resistance of this episode is the reintroduction of Luke Wilson.
Oh, yeah. And Scully's "Hoo boy." That gets me every time. And Luke Wilson comes in, and you look at him and you're like, he looks kind of funny. And then he grins really big, and it's just...
Teeth.
Yes. Teeth for miles.
Yes. When I was making the poster for this episode, when we go through this process with Acme Archives is the official licensee for 20th Century Fox art. So I work with them and I work with Fox. For episodes, we have the likeness rights to all of like the main cast. There's never an issue in terms of including them on a poster, because usually that they're contracted to do that. But oftentimes when there is a guest star on the show, there's a question of whether or not they could be included on the poster. And for someone like Luke Wilson, we wouldn't have the likeness rights to put his likeness on a poster. but I wanted to include him in the poster in some way, so I decided to just draw these teeth from this scene, which I think worked well.
Yes.
But I wanted to find a way to allude to the sheriff, even though we couldn't include Luke Wilson. And it was the same for Renna, where we weren't sure if we had the rights to his likeness, so I created a version of him where it's really just eyes and teeth. So it's not recognizably the actor who portrays him, but it's recognizable that it is the character that we all know and love from the episode.
I think that's really cool. I mean, I know that's difficult for you because you have to kind of be really creative in how you deal with that, but I think it, in some ways, makes it almost even better because, you know, we get like this really neat version that is more of an inside joke to fans. That we all the fans immediately know what it is, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I do. I agree. Sometimes it takes me a while to get to that point because I can get frustrated about limitations. But it's like the Star Wars thing where, you know, they were sort of reinventing the wheel with the first Star Wars film, and they had to find cost-effective ways to do all these special effects, and they ended up creating all these really cool things through like kit mashing and stuff like that. And then you have like an unlimited budget with like the prequels, and there's just something missing. There's, you know, when you don't have to be clever and creative to get around these kind of issues, sometimes you lose something in the process. How
do you feel about the different versions? I know we talked a little bit about it, but the different versions of the sheriff as they reflect Mulder and Scully's point of view.
Well, I think the sheriff in particular is interesting because, you know, a lot of the things that happen in these stories, we just sort of have to take at face value and they're left ambiguous. But the sheriff is not one of them. We meet him again in the last act, and we see that it is closer to Scully's recollection than Mulder's. And because of that, I mean, I think there's a lot you can read into that in terms of how Mulder feels about Scully, and particularly if he feels jealous that Scully is attracted to this other guy. So I think that, I think like you can read a lot into the way that Mulder perceives Scully's relationships with other men. And I think that was a lot for the shippers to chew on.
Definitely. And I think it's interesting that what you said about how Mulder sees him as almost like a threat. So he kind of makes his version of the sheriff a little dumber, and he kind of plays up his own theories that he's like this genius, and you know, he's like super smart, and this guy's just this dumb dude, and then you know, in Scully's version, he's just such a good listener, and he's just hung on every word that she says, and he pays attention to her, and he, you know, I'm just like, yeah, I get it. I get it.
These are the things that Scully wants from a partner, however you want to interpret that word, whether it's a romantic partner or maybe just a partner at work. And they are things that clearly she feels like she's not getting.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a really interesting dynamic. Whereas Mulder, you know, Scully sees something that she really wants, and Mulder sees something that he's threatened by. Yeah.
Very tragic.
Yeah. So we get to the creepy cemetery. And one of my favorite lines was the wetlands. We used to have swamps, but only the EPA made us take to calling them wetlands. Yeah.
It's great.
It's good. And then, you know, Mulder goes through the litany of what makes a vampire and all that.
And that's something really clever about the writing of this episode as well, because Vince Gilligan was able to sort of latch on to some really lesser known vampire lore, and was able to throw away a lot of the tropes to a certain extent when it comes to vampires and what we think of, and like the Bram Stoker version and everything that's come after that, and finding these little bits of trivia and really playing them up in the episode for his own version of this creature.
Yeah. I never had heard anything about the OCD before. I thought, you know, that That was an interesting tidbit.
Yeah.
A lot of the things I had heard, but not that. And so then they cut to the cemetery stakeout. And I love, if I never would have noticed it. I usually watch with the closed captionings on now. And there's a wolf howl in the distance.
Of course there is.
If you listen closely.
I will say, I think it's interesting that, you know, in Scully's version of the story, she is clearly like a victim to Mulder's rants and to him not appreciating her. And in Mulder's story, he's a victim as well. You can see how abrasive Scully seems to him. But even in his own story, he is such a putz because he doesn't realize the connection between the pizza boy and the cemetery when he's actively looking for someone who would be hanging out at the cemetery. And then, of course, the entire sequence with them trying to get into this runaway RV.
One of my favorite shots in the whole episode is when he's telling the sheriff, he's like, oh, the killer will return to the scene of the crime. Oh, he'll definitely come back. And then you just see the car driving away.
Right.
After, you know, Ronnie driving the pizza away. And everybody knows it's him, but it's...
Right.
You know, and it just goes on for like a couple extra seconds than you think it should. And it's just like...
To make Mulder look as foolish as possible. I mean,
perfection.
Ronnie even says, like, hey, Sheriff. Oh, hey, Ronnie. As Mulder's just sitting there looking off into the distance stewing. I will find this creature.
He's listening for all that magication going on.
Right.
Because it couldn't possibly be Ronnie. He's just the pizza delivery guy.
And in that scene, or in a scene earlier, he literally mentions to Scully, like, you know, some folks believed that someone having red hair was a sign of vampirism.
Yes.
And here's this ginger kid hanging out in the cemetery in the middle of the day.
Right. Even more of a ginger than Scully.
Absolutely. Yes.
So we got to, they get called away from their stakeout to go to the RV park. And is this one of your favorite parts of the episode? It's pretty hilarious.
I think it's interesting that, you know, he tries to glaze over this, but Scully pushes him. And I think that it's fair to say that this is an accurate account of what happened. I just think it's so funny that they could not shoot out those tires from, 20 feet away. It's really says something about FBI training that marksmanship is so poor.
The angle, the low angle, and it makes them look so big and dramatic when they're like, yeah, let's shoot out the tires, no big deal. And they step up like these manly men, and they're just ready to get these tires blown out and take care of it all. And even the music, I don't know if you noticed this, the music, during that scene, there's a hint of the Flight of the Valkyries.
Oh, really?
Yeah, go back and listen to it because it's priceless. It's just this very subtle X-Files-y hint that Mark Snow did. It's brilliant.
It was interesting meeting Mark Snow at X-Fest, and he and I got to chat a couple of times, and he's so funny. And when you listen to his soundtracks, it comes through. It's just this... He's got a real sense of fun and humor, especially in episodes like this. So I thought that it made sense that his work is representative of the way that he carries himself.
Yeah, he's just brilliant. So good. And then after that, Mulder comes back to the hotel again, and we figure out that, the reason he's covered in mud originally is because of this being dragged by the RV.
Dragged in a circle in the RV.
Scully completely berates him. I spent hours on my feet, and I do it all for you, Mulder. I had half a cream cheese bagel this morning. It wasn't even real cream cheese. It was light cream cheese. I do it all for you, Mulder. All for you.
I think it's interesting that is the way that Mulder interpreted that exchange, because I do feel like Scully feels that way, and I think it's interesting that at many times in the series we feel like Mulder is oblivious to everything that Scully does for him, but in this sequence, I don't know, it becomes pretty clear Mulder knows. He just finds it really annoying that when it's brought up to him. It really cramps his style. It's a very complicated relationship between these two. And I love how much this episode points that out and sort of makes fun of these two people that it's almost like a constant missed connection between the two of them for a decade. Yeah.
And then Ronnie comes in with the pizza and he goes, "It's $12.98." Mulder, he's like, "Here's $13." And this is not the first or last time Mulder will give a terrible tip or no tip at all. I mean,
it's that government wage, I'm sure.
Right. I'm sure that's his excuse. Yeah.
But all I could think of during that was, Mulder, everything that you're doing right now is you're going to put on an expense report. So why not tip the kid? Because you're going to get it back anyway. That was my thought.
Yeah. Oh, Mulder. And then he calls Scully, and we hear her say creep.
Right.
The line from before.
Right. Yeah, so this is the point in the episode where it gets its most creepy, I would say. Mm-hmm. This is the point that feels most like an X-Files episode prior to the final act, because you have this sort of building tension. Mulder realizes that during him getting his wallet and coming back and eating the pizza that his shoes have been untied, which is the telltale vampiric sign in this episode. But by the time he realizes the shoes are untied, he's already eaten some of the pizza and is starting to feel the effects of the drug. And we have a figure slowly entering the room, which is Ronnie, and he is in full vampire mode. But again, and this goes to the writing and the directing as well, this tension is completely killed when Mulder looks like he's going for his gun, but instead grabs his handy-dandy pack of sunflower seeds and throws them all over the floor.
Yeah. I love Ronnie's reaction. She's like, "Oh, man, why'd you have to go and do that for?"
Right. And then
you are in big trouble.
He literally says that. He starts to pick up the sunflower seeds one by one.
And it's got to be one by one. He can't just, sweep them up with his hand or anything. It's, one at a time.
In Rain Man style, as is mentioned a little earlier, as Luke Wilson's dim-witted sheriff is trying to understand the concept of obsessive-compulsive disorder. But Mulder passes out, and when he awakes, Ronnie, we assume, has picked up every single sunflower seed and is atop of him. And this is the other big change that we see for this moment in terms of Mulder, Scully, and Scully's story. Scully barges in, Ronnie stands, and very clearly 2 bullets strike him in the chest.
Yeah. There's even that up-close shot to make the point.
Yes.
Yeah.
He then does a matrix jump over the bed, which Scully has an opinion about as well, as we cut back. And she says he did not do that. That did not happen.
Right. Yeah. And then it was a flying squirrel. I don't think I'd use the phrase flying squirrel
exactly.
when we talked to Skinner, but that's what happened.
Right. This moment, we see a little past what we saw, because we see Scully eventually pursuing, and then
over hill and dale.
Yes. But we also see Mulder, as he's coming to, a little tipsy. He breaks a chair in order to fashion a stake. Now, since the DVDs came out originally, there has been a blooper in this episode. And Sarah, do you know about this blooper that happens at this point?
No, tell us.
Okay. So when Season 5 was originally aired, it was aired in 4:3 format, so regular television format. X-Files was shot on 35mm film, which was in a full anamorphic widescreen. And so for the DVDs, they finally took this season and expanded the sides out. So you're getting more picture on the left and the right, as opposed to having black bars. And this is great because the film, for the most part, was shot to be safe in that aspect ratio. But in this scene, when Mulder throws the chair down, there's a moment when he is looking for a leg to use as a stake. And in the DVD, you see, from nowhere, a random person's hand erupt from the left side of the screen and drop a pre-cut steak down into the pile and then pull away. at which point Mulder immediately grabs it and gets out of frame. And the first time I saw this after I got the DVDs, I lost it. I thought it was so funny.
It makes it 1,000 times better.
And I just thought, like, wow, this, and it works with the episode, and obviously it's a blooper, but unfortunately I have to report that they have adjusted the framing on the Blu-rays so that the blooper no longer exists. So hang on to those DVDs.
It's got to be on YouTube somewhere.
Yes, that random crew member's hand erupt from nowhere and place a steak for Mulder to grab.
Following this, we get a scene that has neither Mulder or Scully in it. So this is completely fresh. And it's the medical examiner in Cheney, Texas. And I love this guy. He cracks me up every time. And his name, if you didn't know, is Brent Butt.
No, I did not know that. Yes. Is this the character or the actor?
It's the actor.
Okay.
I think in the credits he's just the medical examiner or the coroner.
Okay.
He's hilarious. He's so great.
And it's nice that we know his character survives this ordeal.
Indeed.
I love the practical effect that's done here to trick the audience into thinking there's a steak being pulled out of Ronnie, where they just put the camera at an angle and this actor can just pull it out from behind the...
his armpit.
Yes, from behind the armpit of the character.
Not obvious at all.
No, not at all.
Superb acting
I love
skills
that stuff.
Make it look... His probable cause of death. Gee, that's a tough one.
Painstakingly pulls this steak out. And then there's this wonderful sort of horror film camera angle where the coroner walks towards camera, gets very close to camera, and to the point where the background is not in focus, but we see, blurry in the back, Ronnie sits straight up on the coroner's table.
So creepy.
But again, they do a great job of taking that creepiness and pulling the rug out from under it. When he approaches the coroner to attack, opens his mouth, and then licks his teeth, and is like, oh man, I don't have my fangs in right now. So again, the episode will remind you again and again, any moment when you actually feel tension or fear, hey guys, this is a comedy. Everything's fine.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're all in good hands here. It's supposed to be funny.
Just sit back and enjoy.
Cut to Mulder and Scully on the couch in Skinner's office waiting for their meeting. And they're just fussing. Scully's fussing over Mulder, trying to straighten his tie. And
so cute.
She reminds him, just remember, tell him you were drugged. And shout out to Arlene Pledgey. Mitch Pledgey's wife is in the scene as his assistant.
Nice.
Awesome.
That's
and
great.
We get to see Skinner in this episode. You know I love Skinner, JJ.
I know you do. We see him and as usual, he steals the show, even if he's only in a scene.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So he has a line where he comes out and informs them that Ronnie Strickland's body is missing, and the coroner, in conjunction with this, has been attacked and bitten, but not killed.
Just nod.
Just nod on.
So then they find their self back on the road.
Back in Cheney.
And again, this is the point where they reconnect with the sheriff, and there's this look between Mulder and Scully behind the sheriff's back, where Scully gleefully points to her teeth, saying, look how handsome he actually
Told you so.
is.
Yeah. Yes.
Take that, Mulder. It's so funny because, David Duchovny is this tall, dark, handsome guy, and you almost feel like it would play better, these moments, if he wasn't so handsome, because yes, he's going to feel, a little bit threatened by Luke Wilson, but he's still David Duchovny, he's going to be fine.
Exactly. He's not going to have any
He's got peak season 5 hair right now. Nothing can stop this man.
Can we just talk about the hair for a second? Shout out Mulder and Scully's hair.
The most longing sound I've ever heard.
Especially Scully. Just, I mean, the hair in this episode is stellar. I need to do some research. If anybody knows who the hairstylist was for season 4 and 5, even 6. They get back to the cemetery, right?
Yes, they're in the creepy cemetery, And what is the thought behind coming back to the cemetery?
It's a good question.
I think is this continuing Mulder's stakeout from before, thinking that they're definitely gonna show up here at some point.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, when there's a missing body, you go check the cemetery, right? I don't know.
Oh, actually, I think that there was a line in which, and this is very much a more traditional Dracula thing, where vampires want to spend time in their home soil.
Yeah, their native soil.
Exactly, in their native soil.
Yeah,
and this is how Mulder is interpreting it. But then Mulder sort of has a bit of a light bulb about another possible location that he could be, and that is the
because
RV
of
park.
the general delivery.
Yes.
Mail at the
absolutely.
Where would you live if your mail came general delivery? The trailer park.
Which is something that the genius sheriff thinks of, because he's so handsome and smart.
Exactly.
And then Mulder, as altruistic as he'll be in this episode, allows Scully to remain at the cemetery with her crush and goes off to solve the case himself. Amazing.
Don't say I never did nothing for you.
Yeah, right.
And then the sheriff gives her coffee in a boot. I need to track down one of those boots. Surely there's got to be a million of them in Texas.
There must be.
The roadside.
Just go on eBay. I'm sure you could buy a lot of 12 for $10 plus shipping. Yeah. This is where the episode for me starts to feel truly like an episode of The X-Files. Mm-hmm. We have Mulder and Scully separated. We have Mulder basically breaking and entering into a residence, in this case an RV. And things start to take a bit of a turn here from both of their perspectives. The more predictable story would be Mulder's, who breaks into this RV and finds a coffin. And inside the coffin, surprise, surprise, is their suspect, Ronnie.
With the headphones on.
With the headphones on, right. Did we hear what he's listening to?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Any guesses? I'm going to say Monster Mash. I think just Monster Mash on loop. I think that he recorded his own blank audio cassette with Monster Mash on loop. That's my guess. You think Ocean
Shaft.
Sounds?
The soundtrack to Shaft.
Into Shaft. There you go.
Dracula, an audiobook.
It's possible. Yeah. Wouldn't that be fun?
Have to educate himself. He's got to get it right.
I'm going to say it is Dracula on audiobook, but in between each chapter is Monster Mash.
Yeah.
And it just goes back and forth.
We'll go with that.
That's my official guess.
I do like the part where Scully's in the car with the sheriff, and as he's talking and we start to realize exactly what he's saying, because, you know, on first glance he's talking just in general and you don't really, like, we know, but Scully doesn't. Yeah. And as the drugs start to kick in as she's drinking and then he starts saying these things, just that juxtaposition of those two things going on, it's just so creepy.
Right. And you realize the entire RV park is in on it. That not only is Ronnie a vampire, but this is a town full of vampires. The difference between Ronnie and the others is Ronnie's not as cool as we are. It's funny, as in most of these episodes, Mulder's theory ends up panning out. He's dealing with a vampire, but it's a vampire who has seen, too many Bela Lugosi movies. Yeah. And he has sort of fetishized this popular myth of the vampire with the pointy teeth and the sucking of the blood.
As usual, a little bit of Scully's theory, a little bit of Mulder's theory, and they were both correct. Which is why I think this show is so great.
Mulder is really good at, taking Scully's theory and making it his own by the end of the episode, which is sort of what he does in this one.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we're dealing with a vampire, and it's like, Scully's like, we're dealing with someone who thinks they're a vampire. And Mulder's like, actually, it's both. But I will still take the credit. So, things are getting weird in the car, and Scully starts to sort of fade out, and it's not the sexual tension in the car that's doing it. It is the drug that is in her cowboy boot.
Roofied by a cowboy boot.
Right. And at the same time, we have this sort of, Night of the Living Dead kind of, Mulder being overcome by this slew of green-eyed RV inhabitants, which we now know are vampires. And we go to black, and it's sort of like, wait, is this the end of the series?
The breadsticks.
Oh, the breadsticks. I'm sorry. Yes. Mulder, showing that he too has seen too many Bela Lugosi movies, grabs 2 breadsticks from Aunt Bee's pizza and tries to use them as a crucifix to head off.
Surprisingly ineffective.
Absolutely, as one would imagine. And so when we come back from this, I think we jump back right to the car, right?
Yeah, Mulder's in the car in the RV park. We just see his boots hanging out the window.
Yes.
Because he's so tall and handsome, his feet can't fit.
Yes,
and the boots
absolutely.
are untied.
I'm sure that was in the script.
Mm-hmm.
Mulder, too tall and handsome for his entire physique to be held by an automobile, is popping out of the driver's side window.
And then Scully walks up, but she's wearing the sheriff's coat.
Which is so great.
So we don't know right away if it's the sheriff or, and then we see it's Scully, which I kind of appreciate because, the sheriff may have drugged her, but he still gave her his coat, so that he could be a real gentleman and make sure that she didn't get too cold in the car while she was in her drugged out stupor.
Yes. And there's a very subtle moment during this scene where you see Mulder clock that she's wearing the coat and have a negative reaction to that as he interprets it in his own way.
Yeah. You think he's checking for bite marks or hickeys.
Right. Which is it?
Yeah.
The RV park is abandoned. We find that the horde of vampires that Mulder came across have disappeared without a trace. They've left town, including Ronnie.
Pulled up stakes.
Pun, I'm sure, intended. And then we find ourselves back in D.C. as they are recounting the final part of this tale to A.D. Skinner.
And that is essentially exactly the way it happened.
Essentially, exactly.
Except for the part about the buck teeth. So do you want to hear what some of the listeners had to say about the episode?
Oh, yeah. Did you post it online?
I did.
Is this like a mailbag thing?
Mailbag. Yep. I don't know if you're going to be surprised about this. Prepare yourself.
We'll see.
Everybody liked it.
Whoa.
I know.
Amazing.
Did you just fall out of your chair just then with surprise?
I actually I flew back out the window that's directly behind me. And in the time you said that, I had to run all the way back up the steps into my office.
Like a flying squirrel.
Like a flying squirrel. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think it's probably in a lot of people's top 10, if not top 5 episodes of the series. And the X-Files is such. I mean, in my opinion, it's a really hard show to formulate a top 5 because you love episodes like Bad Blood in a very different way than you love episodes like, Memento Mori.
Right.
They just feel different, excellent in their own way, but it almost feels unfair to judge them against one another.
And it's really funny. We'll get to this when we get to the comments a little bit. But kind of in general, one of the things I noticed when I was reading through was everybody says immediately, like, this is my favorite comedic episode. And also Jose Chung.
And also
like
Jose
nobody
Chung.
wants to actually go ahead and say, like, I like this better than Jose Chung. Like, straight out.
People.
Like, I like, everybody's like, oh, well, Jose Chung's, though.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I'll put it out there. I will choose a side. I will say that while I love Jose Chung, I think Bad Blood is the better episode. I think that it does more with character dynamics. I think that the jokes are funny. I think that while it does have some great guest stars, it doesn't rely heavily on a guest comedic performance in the same way that Jose Chung does.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and plant my flag on that hill you just built, and we will stand there together, JJ.
Let's both die on this hill.
Yeah. Okay. So Andrew says, one of my top 5 favorites, genius writing, such a perfect distillation of Mulder and Scully and their dynamic. David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson are spectacular in this one. I come back to this again and again.
See, I hear that and I'm like, okay, it's one of your top 5. What are the other top 4?
Yeah.
I need to know how reliable your opinion is, Because if you're like, oh, yeah, it's Bad Blood, and then it's my struggle for, and then I really love season 1's episode Space, I'm going to be like, whoa, I don't know. I don't know about this. Maybe I should rethink Bad Blood.
Robert says, one of the show's funniest episodes. You can do a lot of great drama with the Rashomon concept, but every last bit of comedic gold here. On first watch, I actually thought Mulder got the entity of the oh shit out and being like, wow, I didn't know you could do that on television. Much different time and network standards. I think I prefer Scully's version of Mulder to the vice versa, but definitely Mulder's version of the sheriff. And thanks, X-Files, for introducing me to the Shaft theme, albeit without all that funky coolness stripped away from it, Mulder's druggy a cappella version. Shut my mouth for rating that poorly.
Amazing. And It did the same thing for you, you said, right? That
yeah.
You went out and you bought the Shaft CD.
Absolutely. I'd be curious to see if there was a jump in sales after that episode.
I'm sure that statistic exists somewhere.
Yeah.
This gets me thinking, in our age of digital access, if anybody has thought to take this episode and try and make like a cut of it as just a regular episode of the X-Files, where they take pieces from both of Mulder and Scully's stories and try to weave one narrative out of it. I doubt it, but this is me trying to find a way to announce my next project. I will be creating the new cut of Bad Blood in which I re-edit the episode to make it less good because fans are demanding it.
No. Not interested. Sorry, JJ.
No. Oh, I'm already halfway done.
Stick with the art, man.
Right. Okay, thank you. I need that. I need to hear that.
Yeah, don't get distracted. Don't get sidetracked there. Okay, Michael says, best comedic episode ever. This was the first season 5 episode that really blew me away back when the season aired for the first time. Anna says, love it.
How many O's?
3.
3, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Just wanted to
She loves it
that.
3 O's.
Loves it 3 O's.
Yep. Natalie says, my favorite rewatch episode. This man's shoes are untied.
Eureka.
Annie says, what can be said about this episode that hasn't already been said? Vince Gilligan's best comedic work by far. Of course, you wouldn't have this fun episode without the genius of Darren Morgan, but that doesn't devalue his script by any means. In fact, the various viewpoints and exaggerated characterizations remind me of Jose Chung's. Seeing the exaggerated versions of Mulder and Scully through each other's viewpoints is wonderful. So funny. Did I mention how funny this episode is? Skinner, although only briefly in Bad Blood, has very funny line with a nod on neck, and Luke Wilson is just amazing as a hot and seductive sheriff with the buck teeth. I'm not sure if it's my favorite, but Bad Blood is the one I come back to watch when I'm having a bad day. It's my favorite feel-good episode.
Nice.
So, yeah. Yep.
I like when entertainment can do that, where it can, if you're having a bad day, you can put something on and it can make you feel a little better. Man, this episode has so much to live up to with Jose Chung in the fan base. It's like a disorder where you cannot mention this episode without paying homage to Darren Morgan, but it is what it is.
I mean, they are
I'm still
a little bit
hill.
similar in the storytelling. Yeah. I mean, well, let's read this from Kurt North because I think it kind of actually plays on that. He mentions that. So he says, poignant episode for me. My younger brother died of a brain tumor at 28 years old. This was his favorite episode, with his favorite moment being, well, there you go. See, I don't hear no birds singing. Of course, it's winter and we ain't got no birds. He used to howl at that. Not as good as Jose Chung's from Outer Space, but it has many similarities with it, which I consider to be relevant. Jose Chung was about the event and people's perception of it, or altered perception of it. This is very much about the personalities and their subjective viewpoint on themselves and others. Both work, and both are episodes I consider some of the best TV ever. So that kind of plays into what you were just saying. And it's, we've got Jose Chung's relevant with people seeing the same event differently. Mm-hmm. And they've been, had their minds altered, literally.
Right.
And their memories stolen. But this is kind of the same thing, but just almost like the Mandela effect, where they remember the same thing but differently.
It's definitely a constant theme throughout Darren Morgan's work. And I feel like the point that they made about the event versus the characters is a really good one. And I think that's probably why I prefer Bad Blood. Because I think I just personally, as a viewer, connect a little bit more with stories that focus on character in the way that this one does, as opposed to the event itself and all like the Men in Black things that are happening in Jose Chung. And I tend to be a bigger fan these days. When I was younger and when the show was originally on, I would greatly look forward to the mythology episodes to try and complete more of that puzzle that was being assembled every season. But now, on the other side of it, it's the Monster of the Week episodes that I find myself coming back to and thinking about and enjoying again and again. And while Jose Chung definitely isn't a mythology episode, it's very sort of tied in to the mythology of the show in that way.
Right.
And these days, I just love we're going to this town, we're never going to go to it again. We're going to encounter this weird supernatural entity, which we will be unable to prove the existence of, but we're going to come out of it fairly unscathed and have a little bit of fun along the way.
Get drugged while you're at it. Yeah. I think that pretty much sums it up. I had a little bit of fun along the way with you, JJ, in this episode, talking about it.
I.
Absolutely.
As did I. Thank you, Sarah.
Yes. So I know you mentioned at the top of the episode you are headed to San Diego Comic-Con. What else
Correct.
have you got going on?
I've got a bunch of stuff coming out for Comic-Con this year. Earlier this year, we finished up, I did a trilogy of posters for the original Star Wars movies, and we are debuting my 3 poster set for the prequel movies, which I'm excited about. They're very vintage style throwback posters to like the 1930s. I also have a new print coming out for the James Cameron film Aliens, the second one in the series, which I'm pretty excited about because I really love that movie, and particularly Sigourney Weaver in that film. I'm wrapping up my Indiana Jones classic trilogy posters this week. The poster for The Last Crusade will debut at Comic-Con, and so you can get all 3 of those posters as of this week. New X-Files poster coming out, which is for Unusual Suspects, the Lone Gunman episode.
Yay!
So I'm excited about that. It is a version of the poster that debuted during the rewatch, which is when a lot of my posters hit the web. But I went back in and I gave it a little bit of a facelift. Nice. So I'm actually a lot happier with it now. All the prints that I mentioned are limited edition, so they do sell out, which is a bummer, but, you just got to get on it. You just
makes them more special.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And other than that, I'll have more art debuting later this year. I'm currently working with IDW on Star Trek Year 5. I'm doing covers for that series. They're all vintage, like retro-y style stuff, which is my usual MO. That's been fun because every 2 issues is like one story arc. So everything is like issue 1 and issue 2 are one story, issue 3 and issue 4. So for the odd numbered issues of that run, I've been doing like movie posters for the episodes. And then for the even numbered ones, I'm doing space tourism posters that focus on the place that they go to during the story. So that's been a really fun project.
That's really cool.
And that series is supposed to run for at least a year, but hopefully 2 years. So there'll be a lot more art coming out of that. And IDW and I have started talking about ways that we could make that art available beyond the covers, if perhaps as prints. So
yeah, you've got to definitely, I don't know if you have any left, but if you have any Bad Blood posters left, you got to set one aside for me, because now we've done this episode, I have to have one. I mean, I had to have one anyway, but
there are copies of Bad Blood still available from darkinkart.com, which is the folks I work with Fox. They're like it's like Acme Archives website.
Awesome.
That works better than the Acme Archives website, if that makes any sense. So they're available on there. I will have another batch of artist proofs if you're into the signed ones.
Yes, it has to be signed.
Yeah, okay. Well, you can get those directly from me from my online shop, and that's at jjlendl.com/shop.
Excellent. Well, we sure appreciate you being here and talking about this episode with us.
This is great. I love coming on to the Xcast, and you guys are so awesome, and you guys have been so nice and generous with your time, and I really appreciate everything you've done for the fandom and for the show, and particularly for boosting my signal in terms of the artwork I'm doing for the X-Files.
So where can we find you online?
You can find me at jjlendl.com, and then you can follow me on social media at jjlendl on Twitter and Instagram. And if you're a Facebook person, I do have a Facebook page. It's JJ Lendl Art Studio. And I also have my Tumblr, which I really try to update when I remember. But you can access all that through my website at jjlendl.com.
All right. And as always, I'm Sarah Blair. I'm usually on Twitter, sometimes in the Xcast X-Files Basement group on Facebook. You can find me there. And as always, until next time, folks, trust no one.
Trust no one. I missed it.
The Xcast, an X-Files podcast, is produced and hosted by Tony Black, alongside a dedicated team of podcasters and X-Files fans. You can find the show on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the Xcast, or inside our group, the X-Files Basement, an Xcast podcast fan group, plus on Instagram by typing in the XFcast. If you're a fan of the show, why not support us on Patreon? Exclusive bonus episodes, early access to new episodes, plus become part of our Xcast community in the Patreon department. To see our monthly subscription options, just head to patreon.com/the Xcast. That's patreon.com/the Xcast. We'd love to see you join our Patreon community. We're also part of the We Made This podcast network at We Made This Pod on Twitter and We Made This on Facebook. You can find a range of shows on TV, film, music, and popular culture in general on the network. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.